Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, we're going to be talking about repairing your relationship after lies, and the most common one is infidelity, but I have a whole podcast on recovery after infidelity and post, so this is not going to be about that. This is going to be about other kind of lies. You know, there's a lot of lies that somebody can lie about. And before we get into the meat of that, please do subscribe. The most recent subscriber episode was why I do not use all my posts and podcasts to talk to both partners at the same time. Common grievance of my followers. And there are many, many other episodes, so you should be listening to that. And join my Facebook group. Has a bunch of great people in there. We talk about things all the time. That is the way to get questions answered, because I do not post them on my blog anymore. Some people have been like, but you do on Medium. Medium is all reprints. Medium is reprints of everything from Dr. Psych Mom. So I used to take people's individual questions and when I had more time, and now I don't. So if you want to ask me your questions and you miss my Facebook Live, where you can always ask them when I'm going live or wherever I go live, which is mostly Facebook, then you could join the group and start your own thread and talk about it, and I'll chime in, and so will other people. All right, so today we're going to be talking about lying and what are some kinds of lies. So people lie about money, they lie about how much they spend, they lie about whether they're using porn, they lie about whether they went drinking, they lie about if they looked at that other woman in the street, they lie about lots of things, you know? And most of the reasons that people lie are because they were raised in kind of punitive homes and or, you know, where they had to lie basically to do anything. So if your parents are very harsh, and your only recourse, if you want to go to the mall with friends like a normal kid, like everybody's doing, then you got to say that you're not going to the mall with friends. And, you know, you could do that. But before the days of cell phone tracking, it was a lot easier to lie about where you went. And if there was like a lot of rules, then kids learn to lie. So in authoritarian, more strict and harsh homes, kids learn to lie. So, you know, so that they could get to do things and they could have some autonomy and agency, which is a basic human need. Also, sometimes people just see parents lying, you know, so if all the time your parents are very image conscious and they're lying and everybody's having a bad day, but they say, stop it, you know, smile, people are coming, like we don't want them to think of what goes on here, you know, like you'll say your father was dead drunk on the couch and your mother kept saying he was tired and you at some point realized he was drunk. That's a lie. So you realize people lie in order to save face and in order to image manage. So either you do it to get out of trouble or you do it to manage your image so that other people see you more like how you wish that they would see you or how you wish you were. And those are basically the reasons. And so people who are married to people who tend to lie get very crazy about it generally because they feel gaslit because they are being gaslit. It isn't an intention. The person generally, unless they're a sociopath, that's a very, very low probability. Most people do not lie in order to hurt somebody else. In fact, they lie so that nobody gets hurt. That's how they think about it. They think, well, I'm just going to say this. They don't even really think about it. It just kind of comes out of their mouth because they're so used to doing it because they were raised to do it and they've been doing it forever. And so you're, you know, so nobody gets hurt and we can have a nice day. And all the time it's like Charlie Brown in the football. So like the woman will be like, did you put back an empty box of cereal in the pantry? And he'll say no. It's like, let's say it's just the two of them, you know, and there's not even kids yet. And so she says, well, you did. I don't even eat that cereal. And he said, well, I didn't do that. So, I mean, you could see how that would really bother somebody, you know, and then they start to be crazy. That's when people start to do crazy shit, like looking at like the Nest Cam and seeing if they could see this guy take out the cereal and whatever. And so it puts you into this role of like a prosecutor, you know, like going after somebody and litigating whether or not they put back an empty box of cereal. And in the moment, it's like they can't get it out of their mouth that they did it. In fact, they don't even want to allow the memories of doing it to even surface. So they're basically like squelching their memory of having put it back because they don't even want, nobody wants to be a liar. So they're just like not even letting that memory go up into their consciousness, which is what repression is. And they are just defending themselves. And what they'll say is, you're always going after me. You're always attacking me, you know, and then sometimes I'll say something like, if I did finish the cereal and put it back, why is it such a big deal? And the person says it isn't such a big deal. It's that you lied about it, right? So then, this is kind of what couples counseling is like, in case you wanted to feel good about whatever you chose to do for a career, that it's not listening to this. No, I'm kidding. But, you hear this type of shit a lot. And so generally, fairly quickly, hopefully, we can get to the point that it's not about the cereal, and that we can begin the more interesting, deeper work of couples counseling, which is actually interesting, and we can figure out, why does this guy lie about the fucking cereal? And then also, why does it trigger her so much? Because it isn't everybody that would be equally as upset about the guy lying about the cereal. It's obvious he's lying about the cereal. She knows reality. She knows she doesn't eat the cereal. So why? Why doesn't she take it as kind of cute? Like how a 2-year-old would lie to get out of trouble. Well, generally, the people who are liars are, as I just discussed, image conscious people. And they, are... They came off a little different in the honeymoon stage. They came off as Mr. Perfect or Miss Perfect, and they, really got the person interested because they are really professional image managers. That's how they were raised. And so they came off very, very perfect. And what is that like for everybody that's a really good listener? Those are traits of being narcissistic. So people who lie a lot do tend to be somewhat narcissistic. And who's drawn to people with traits of narcissism? People with traits of borderline. So people who have less self-esteem than average. And I have a podcast, the borderline, the narcissist borderline dynamic, extreme preoccupied and avoidant attachment, something like that. Put in narcissist into the Spotify search engine for the Dr. Psych Mom Show, and you'll get it. But so people who are more sensitive than average, people who are more reactive, people who take things more personally, people who have lower self-esteem are generally drawn to these people who lie. And so then they exacerbate each other ad infinitum. They are just crazy. This one is like going to swear at his mother's grave that he never even saw that cereal in his life. And then she is about to light herself on fire to show how upset she is, and it just gets crazy. So what can we do? Well, first of all, the person who lies needs to be in therapy. They really need to be in therapy. So does the other one, but they really need to be in therapy, not to address the lying only, but to address whatever the hell went on in their early life. Because their early life is where they learn to lie. People do not do it out of nowhere. The most crazy making and invalidating thing that people often say in this situation is, I only lie because you go after me so hard. You're always attacking me, so that's why I'm just trying to defend myself, and, it's impossible to live with you. Which, of course, is the other person's greatest fear, is that they're crazy, and they're too crazy to be lovable, and that on some level they are bringing out the worst of this person, who, after all, did act a lot different in the honeymoon stage, even more than average, because they were, an image manager. They like to manage their image so much. So anyway, so this person, the one who lies, needs to kind of go in depth. And I've done this work with people. People with narcissistic traits are some of the best clients because they've never thought about it different. And they're very interested in their own story, quite honestly. And so they're interested, we talk about their childhood. Man, they're on tenterhooks about it. They're like, what happened next? They're so excited because they do like to talk about themselves, sure. And also they've never really gone deep on it. It's either been my parents were a bunch of assholes or my parents were great. That's kind of all that they do. And then the story moved on to them. That's how they were trained to think. But when they go deeper and see these little lies that their mom did, that their dad did, these kind of seeped into their consciousness and informs their way of viewing the world. When we are in some way in trouble, what we should do is lie, and they'll be interested. And then they will usually, many people are interested in seeing if they can stop. And seeing what a real relationship could be like if they stopped lying about little shit all the time. On the other end, the person who's coupled with the liar also should be in therapy because that person has low self-esteem. You're never drawn to somebody who has traits of being self-centered unless you're hitching your wagon to their star because you're not confident in your own star. So this is the borderline narcissist dynamic. And I'm not saying that these people have to have these diagnoses, but they certainly have the traits of one being more reactive and more oversensitive, likely having a history where they felt gaslighted as a kid. So that needs to be explored as well. What is being brought up in you? Because when parents lie, it's not good for the children. But sometimes the children can emulate it, like this more narcissistic liar person. And sometimes kids can go against it, like terribly allergic to any dishonesty, which is like a core aspect of the more borderline or the reactive personality here, is they just hate any dishonesty. It reminds them of their parents who they think were hypocrites or were nasty or acted like they were good, but they really weren't, etc., etc. So these two people are exacerbating each other's core childhood wounds. And I've seen people recover from this kind of thing because that person who's so reactive has to learn, okay, like, we're going to try something new. I'm going to say something like, did you finish the cereal? But I'm going to think about, why am I saying it? Do I really need to say it? I knew he finished the cereal. What was really my point? It's not to say, did you finish the cereal? Because I do know that he did, and it just sets him up to lie. But it's like, please don't put back empty cereal. And then he could learn to say, oh shit, I'm going to lie, feel like I'm about to lie, I'm going to try something else. I know at home, my dad would have said that he didn't do that and started a fight. I'm going to do something different now that I'm learning how to be different. And I'm going to say, okay. I'm just going to say, okay, and accept that feedback, which can be very transformative and super different than how this couple is used to being, to relating to one another, obviously. So she's going to say, please don't put back the cereal when it's empty. And I'm going to say, okay. And then they didn't have a fight. And once a couple can ever avoid a fight that previously would have gone into this doom spiral of one lies and one attacks and one goes forward and one pursues and one distances, then they have a mastery experience under their belt and they can move forward, with more confidence that they could do that in the future. And that's how they could break this intergenerational cycle, because both of them probably in their upbringing, saw bad marriages, marriages that were not truly intimate because either they were extremely based on image managing or they were rife with conflict and disconnection. People, as I say all the time, when people grow up in houses where the parents are happily married, it's like riding a bike. They get happily married. Like, those are the happily married people. They know how to do it. They find each other, and it's like they're giving bat signals to each other. Like, oh, like, I engage normally and healthily here. Oh, you do that too? Oh, okay, I guess we click. But those of us who were not so lucky to grow up with just, in functional families, then you learn all the dysfunctional patterns, and then you have to relearn other patterns of communicating. So in a happier home, for example, people generally wouldn't say, and this may be an epiphany in and of itself worth the price of admission, people wouldn't say, did you put back the cereal? You're like, well, what's wrong with that? That's just a question. It's not just a question. It is an accusation. Does that make it right that he pretended he never saw the cereal in his life? Certainly not. That's crazy. But what you did is not a paragon of mental health either, So, people don't. They would say something like be direct and honest and just say, please don't put back the empty cereal. And in some houses, people would just throw out the empty cereal. So it's like you got a choice. You could either throw out the cereal or you could say it. Or that's it. Those are your choices. What your choice is not is to start a fight. Because if you did not grow up in a house with fighting, then you just don't start a fight. And saying, did you put back the empty cereal is starting a fight. So that person is not being virtuous either in this regard and is not being an excellent partner. And so if they both did their couples counseling and they could see the origin, or if the couples counseling focused on the origin of their dysfunction, their individual interlocking pathology, we call it, then we can start moving toward practicing different ways that the couple can communicate that are more direct, less passive aggressive or directly aggressive, and that actually get the needs met of both people and avoid conflict, particularly conflict that's overheard by the children, which is the worst kind of conflict, as I always discuss. So this could be an interesting one to think about, because if you were the liar, then you probably aren't even listening to this podcast because you're the avoidant attachment one and you are not interested in it, but you may be forced to listen to it, in which case maybe it piqued your interest, as I've said, with people who tend this way, avoidant attachment or more self-involved. They do get interested, certainly. They, are interested in a pattern that makes sense if it's presented to them, if they'll be in one place long enough to hear it. If they'll stay in therapy long enough to hear the insight, then they get interested, right? And so, and if you're the other one, the one that's like, there's nothing wrong with me, he's just a fucking liar, then you could be like, well, wait, like, do I really go after him in a way that's like stuff that I saw growing up? Probably yes. Probably there is an accusatory, very dramatic or martyred style that anybody would respond to poorly. They wouldn't all lie, but nobody would like it. All right, I hope you guys found this one interesting. The next one will likely be a subscriber episode, and I have no idea what that will be yet. I will have to see which way the wind is blowing that morning and decide on the spot. And thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to y'all soon. Have a great day.